Say Millionaire offers a night in which a young virgin must obey his every command, believing this will completely submit her to him. But the woman resists in ways he never expected, and her resistance makes him realize how empty he is inside. By dawn, the millionaire understands that, even with all his power, there are things he can't control. Watch this beautiful life story and leave your comment. The Manhattan skyline gleamed like a crown of steel and glass against the amber sunset. From his penthouse office on the 65th floor, Ethan Blake surveyed the city that had both rewarded and consumed him. At 40, he was at the pinnacle of financial success, the enigmatic CEO of Blake Enterprises, a conglomerate that spanned technology, real estate, and media across 3 continents. "Mr. Blake, your 5 o'clock appointment cancelled. Would you like me to reschedule?" His assistant's voice crackled over the intercom, interrupting his thoughts. "No, that won't be necessary, Diana. You can go home early today." As Diana's heels clicked away down the marble corridor, Ethan turned back to the floor-to-ceiling windows. His reflection stared back at him. Designer suit impeccably tailored to his athletic frame, salt and pepper hair precisely styled, jawline still sharp despite the years. By all measures, he was the embodiment of success. Yet the empire he'd built over 2 decades felt increasingly hollow. The amber light faded to purple, then to darkness, leaving only the artificial glow of the city. Ethan didn't bother turning on the lights in his office. The darkness suited his mood. He loosened his tie and poured himself 2 fingers of 30-year-old Macallan from the crystal decanter on his desk, a gift from some billionaire or another whose name he could barely recall. The alcohol burned pleasantly as it went down, but the sensation was fleeting, like everything else in his life. His phone buzzed. Another invitation to another charity gala where the wealthy performed compassion while networking. He declined without a second thought. The endless cycle of events had long ago lost its appeal. The same faces, the same conversations, the same shallow connections. "What's the point of it all?" he muttered to himself. The vast penthouse apartment that occupied the top 2 floors of a Fifth Avenue building greeted him with silence when he arrived home an hour later. At 12,000 square feet, it was excessive for one person. But Ethan had long ago stopped questioning the excesses in his life. The place was immaculate, cleaned daily by staff he rarely saw, and decorated with museum-quality art selected by a renowned interior designer. None of it reflected him. Nothing here was truly his. It was all just signifiers of wealth, carefully curated symbols of success that had ceased to hold meaning. Ethan walked through the grand foyer, past the living room with its soaring ceilings and panoramic views, straight to his bedroom suite. He shed his clothes, leaving them where they fell, and stepped into the shower, letting scalding water cascade over him, hoping it might wash away the emptiness he felt. It didn't. Later, wrapped in a silk robe, he stood on his private terrace overlooking Central Park. The night air was cool against his face. Below him, the city hummed with life. Millions of people with their dreams, their struggles, their connections. He owned significant portions of that skyline, yet felt disconnected from the humanity it housed. His phone rang again. This time it was Marcus, his oldest friend and the closest thing he had to a confidant. "You missed Richardson's retirement dinner," Marcus said without preamble. "Was I supposed to be there?" Ethan replied, genuinely unable to remember. "You RSVP'd, yes, 3 weeks ago. I covered for you, said you had an emergency board meeting." "Thanks." Ethan didn't offer an explanation. He didn't have one beyond the crushing ennui that had become his constant companion. "Listen, Ethan," Marcus's voice softened. "I'm worried about you. You've been different lately, more withdrawn. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Ethan replied automatically. "Just busy." "Bullshit. I've known you since Columbia. You've always been busy. This is something else." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Marcus. I have everything I ever wanted, and none of it means anything." The silence on the other end stretched for a moment before Marcus spoke again. "You need something new. Something that money can't buy." "Like what?" "I've traveled everywhere. Owned everything worth owning. Dated some of the most beautiful women in the world." Ethan laughed bitterly. "What exactly is left?" Something real, Marcus replied simply. You've been playing the same game for so long, you've forgotten there are other ways to live. The conversation lingered in Ethan's mind long after they hung up. Something real. The concept seemed foreign, almost naive. His world operated on power, influence, and calculated moves. Reality was whatever he shaped it to be. The next morning brought no relief from his existential malaise. His schedule was packed with meetings he couldn't care less about. The quarterly earnings were exceptional. His CFO was practically giddy during their briefing, but Ethan felt nothing. Another billion added to his fortune was just a number on a screen. It was during lunch at an exclusive restaurant in Tribeca, surrounded by New York's elite, that Ethan first saw her. She wasn't supposed to be there. That much was clear from her slightly worn clothing and the way she nervously scanned the room. She was working, carrying a tray of champagne flutes, navigating between tables with careful concentration. What caught his attention wasn't just her beauty, though she was undeniably striking, with chestnut hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and eyes the color of warm amber, but the quiet dignity with which she carried herself. She didn't belong in this world of excess and privilege, yet she moved through it with a grace that many who were born to it lacked. As she approached his table, a drunk venture capitalist at the next table over shifted his chair back without looking, directly into her path. The collision was inevitable. The tray tilted, sending crystal flutes and champagne cascading down. The restaurant fell silent. The venture capitalist turned, his face contorted with entitled anger, ready to berate the server for his own mistake. Ethan watched as the young woman's face flushed with embarrassment, but she didn't cower. She straightened her shoulders and began apologizing professionally, already kneeling to gather the broken glass. "You stupid girl," the man spat. "Do you know how much this suit costs?" Something in Ethan snapped. In 2 strides, he was at the scene, towering over the now-seated venture capitalist. "That's enough," he said quietly, but with the authority that had made him feared in boardrooms across the country. The man looked up, recognition dawning. "Ethan Blake, I didn't realize you were here. This clumsy server bumped into your chair because you moved without looking," Ethan finished for him. "The apology should be coming from you, not her." The restaurant remained silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. The venture capitalist's face reddened, caught between his indignation and the reality of who was confronting him. "It's fine, sir," the young woman said, looking up at Ethan. "I can handle this." Their eyes met, and for a moment Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a genuine connection, fleeting but undeniable. She wasn't intimidated by him, despite clearly knowing who he was. There was strength. Behind those amber eyes, a quiet resilience that intrigued him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Olivia," she replied, still gathering glass. "Olivia Reed." "Well, Olivia Reed," Ethan said, reaching into his wallet and pulling out a business card. "When you're finished here, I'd like to speak with you." He placed the card on her tray and turned back to the venture capitalist. "And you'll be covering the cost of the damaged glassware and her tip for the day." He returned to his table, leaving no room for argument. Through the remainder of his lunch, he found his eyes drawn repeatedly to Olivia as she continued her shift, handling the aftermath with composure. For the first time in months, he felt genuinely curious about another person. When he left the restaurant 2 hours later, he was surprised to find Olivia waiting outside, his business card in her hand. "You wanted to speak with me, Mr. Blake." Her voice was clear and direct. "I did," Ethan confirmed, studying her in the daylight. She was younger than he'd initially thought, mid-20s perhaps, with a natural beauty that required no enhancement. "Your handling of that situation was impressive." Olivia's expression remained guarded. "Thank you for intervening, but it wasn't necessary. I've dealt with worse." "I don't doubt it," Ethan replied. "Walk with me?" She hesitated, then nodded, falling into step beside him as they moved down the busy sidewalk. Despite her casual clothes next to his bespoke suit, there was something matching in their gaits, a shared purpose, a directness. "Why are you working at Delmonico's?" Ethan asked. "You seem overqualified." Olivia laughed, a genuine sound that caught him off guard. Overqualified for serving champagne, that's a first, but to answer your question, I need the money. Simple as that. Where are you from, Olivia Reed? A small town in Pennsylvania you've definitely never heard of, she replied. Came to New York 6 months ago with big dreams. The city's been educating me on reality ever since. Her candor was refreshing. No pretense, no attempt to impress. Him, just plain truth, something rarely offered to a man of his position. What were those dreams? He pressed, genuinely curious. She glanced at him sideways. Why do you care, Mr. Blake? I'm sure you have more important things to concern yourself with than the aspirations of a server. Humor me. Olivia stopped walking, turning to face him. Fully. I came here to be a writer, to tell stories that matter. So far, the only story I'm living is the cliché of the small-town girl struggling to make rent in the big city. She shrugged. Not very original, I'm afraid. Ethan studied her face, the determination in her eyes, the slight defiance in her chin. I might have a proposition for you, Ms. Reed. I'm not interested in being anyone's mistress, Mr. Blake, she said flatly. He couldn't help but laugh, a real laugh, something he hadn't experienced in longer than he could remember. That's not what I'm offering, though I appreciate your directness. Then what are you offering? Ethan considered his next words carefully. The idea forming in his mind was impulsive, possibly reckless, but he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this spark of interest in anything or anyone. One night, he said finally. I'll pay you $1 million for one night of your time. Olivia's eyes widened, then narrowed suspiciously. Doing what exactly? Whatever I ask, Ethan replied, his voice low. No questions, complete obedience. The color drained from Olivia's face, then returned in a flush. That sounds an awful lot like prostitution with extra steps, Mr. Blake. It's not about sex, he clarified, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. It's about control, surrender. Something I suspect neither of us is particularly comfortable with. Olivia laughed incredulously. And why would I agree to that? $1 million, Ethan repeated. Tax-free. Enough to fund your writing career, pay off any debt, live comfortably while pursuing your dreams. He paused. One night and your life changes forever. She stared at him, searching his face for deception or cruelty, finding neither. You're serious. Completely. And if I say no? Then we part ways here, and you go back to serving champagne to entitled businessmen. Olivia fell silent, clearly calculating, weighing options and consequences. Ethan waited, feeling more alive than he had in years, the possibility of her acceptance sending a thrill through him that no business deal had managed in a decade. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the decision. When? This Friday? I'll send a car for you at 8. Ethan held out his hand. Do we have an agreement? Olivia looked at his outstretched hand, then back to his face. In her eyes, Ethan saw not just acceptance but challenge, as if she were stepping into a ring with him, prepared to fight. She took his hand, her grip surprisingly firm. We have an agreement, Mr. Blake. One night, $1 million. Their hands clasped. Ethan felt something shift in the universe. Something fundamental had changed, though neither of them could possibly foresee how completely this arrangement would transform them both. The days before Friday passed in a blur for Olivia. She moved through her shifts at Delmonico's mechanically, her mind consumed with doubt, anticipation, and moral questioning. $1 million. The figure seemed absurd, impossible, yet she had seen the seriousness in Ethan Blake's eyes. He wasn't a man who made empty promises. Her tiny studio apartment in Bushwick felt even more confining as she paced its limited floor space Thursday night, rehearsing arguments with herself. The logical part of her brain calculated what that money could do: pay off her student loans, fund her writing for years, maybe even buy a small place somewhere, security, freedom, everything she'd been struggling for since arriving in New York. The idealistic part of her, the small-town girl, raised with clear values, recoiled at the arrangement. 1 night of complete obedience. The implications twisted her stomach into knots. "It's just 1 night," she told her reflection in the bathroom mirror, trying to convince herself. 1 night for complete freedom afterward. Friday arrived with merciless speed. Olivia called in sick to work and spent the day alternating between anxiety and preparation. She showered twice, changed outfits 5 times, and finally settled on a simple black dress that was elegant without trying too hard. Her one expensive purchase since coming to New York, saved for special occasions that had never materialized. At 7:55 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Car waiting downstairs." With trembling fingers, she texted back, "How did you get my number or know where I live?" The reply came instantly, "I'm Ethan Blake." Those 3 words contained multitudes, a reminder of his power, his resources, his reach. For the first time, real fear mingled with Olivia's nervousness. Just who was she dealing with? The black SUV waiting at the curb had tinted windows and a silent driver who opened the door without speaking. As Olivia slid into the plush leather-back seat, she found a sealed envelope with her name written in an elegant script. Inside was a black silk blindfold and a handwritten note, "Put this on. The experience begins now." Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was her last chance to back out, to return to her apartment and her struggle and her principles intact. $1 million, she reminded herself. One night, with shaking hands, she tied the blindfold over her eyes, plunging herself into darkness. The drive seemed endless, the turns and stops disorienting without sight to guide her. Olivia tried to maintain her mental map of the city, but soon lost track. They were heading out of the city, she thought. The sounds changed, the rhythm of the car's movement altered. When the vehicle finally stopped, she heard her door open. A hand, the driver's, she assumed, helped her out and guided her forward. The air felt different, cleaner, carrying the scent of water and trees. Not Manhattan, then. Perhaps the Hamptons or Connecticut. "May I remove this now?" she asked, her fingers touching the edge of the blindfold. No. The voice wasn't the driver's, but Ethan's, suddenly close. Not yet. His hand replaced the driver's on her elbow, guiding her forward. She heard doors opening, felt the change from outdoor air to the climate-controlled interior of what must be a magnificent home, judging by the echoing quality of their footsteps. 5 more steps, Ethan instructed, his voice low and close to her ear. Then 3 stairs up. Olivia followed his instructions, hyper-aware of his proximity, of the heat of his body near hers, of the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive and understated. "Stop here," he said finally. She heard the sound of a door opening, felt a change in the air again. "Now you may remove the blindfold." Olivia untied the silk with unsteady fingers. As her vision adjusted, she found herself standing in what could only be described as a temple of luxury. The room was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a panoramic view of what appeared to be Long Island Sound, moonlight glittering on the dark water below. The decor was minimalist but exquisite. Every piece of furniture, every object, clearly selected with extraordinary taste and unlimited budget. And there was Ethan, watching her reaction with those penetrating eyes. He'd changed from the business attire she'd seen him in before. Now he wore perfectly tailored black pants and a charcoal cashmere sweater that softened his imposing presence without diminishing it. "Welcome to my weekend home," he said, walking to a bar cart of gleaming glass and chrome. "Would you like a drink?" "Please," Olivia replied, her mouth dry. "White wine if you have it." He poured 2 glasses of what was undoubtedly an exceptional vintage and handed one to her, his fingers brushing hers briefly. "Are you nervous, Olivia?" The directness of the question caught her off guard, but she decided honesty was her best strategy. Terrified, actually. His lips curved in what might have been a genuine smile. "Good. Fear heightens the senses, makes experiences more vivid." Olivia took a larger sip of wine than she intended. "So, Mr. Blake—" "Ethan," he corrected. "We're beyond formalities now." "Ethan," she repeated, finding the name strange on her tongue. "What exactly happens now?" You said complete obedience, but I need to know what that entails. He studied her for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. Dinner first. I find hunger makes people unpredictable. As if on cue, double doors at the far end of the room opened, and a man in formal serving attire appeared. Dinner is served, sir. The dining room was just as impressive as the first, a long table that could seat 20 set for just the two of them at one end, candles burning in silver holders, more windows showcasing the moonlit water. The meal was exquisite, course after course of culinary artistry that Olivia would have appreciated more if her stomach weren't tied in knots of anticipation. Ethan watched her throughout dinner, his gaze analytical, as if he were studying a particularly complex investment opportunity. He asked questions about her childhood in Pennsylvania, her education at Penn State, her writing aspirations, and listened to her answers with surprising attentiveness. "You haven't asked about me," he noted, as dessert was served. "A delicate confection of chocolate and gold leaf." "I already know about you," Olivia replied. "Everyone does. Ethan Blake, business prodigy who built a tech startup in his dorm room and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar empire by 30, now diversified into real estate, media, and venture capital, known for being brilliant, ruthless, and intensely private. You've done your research." "I Googled you in the car on the way here," she admitted. "Until this week, you were just another billionaire whose name I vaguely recognized." He laughed, that same genuine laugh she'd heard days earlier. "Honesty. Refreshing." He set down his fork. "Are you ready to begin our arrangement in earnest, Olivia?" Her mouth went dry again. "Yes." Ethan stood and extended his hand. "Then come with me." He led her through the sprawling mansion, up a sweeping staircase, and down a hallway lined with subtle lighting and what appeared to be original artwork. Finally, they stopped before double doors of dark wood. "Before we enter," Ethan said, turning to face her, "I need to be absolutely clear about something. You can leave at any time. Say the word enough and this ends immediately. The car will take you back to the city and you'll never hear from me again." He paused. "But if you use that word, our arrangement is void. No payment." Olivia swallowed. "Hard. I understand." "Do you?" His eyes bore into hers. "Because what happens beyond these doors will challenge you in ways you might not anticipate." "I said I understand," she repeated with more conviction than she felt. Ethan held her gaze for another moment, then nodded and opened the doors. The room beyond was large and dimly lit, dominated by an enormous bed. But it wasn't a bedroom in the conventional sense. There were other pieces of furniture Olivia couldn't immediately identify, as well as what appeared to be restraints mounted to various surfaces. Her breath caught in her throat. "I told you I wasn't interested in being anyone's—" "And I told you this isn't about sex," Ethan interrupted. "At least not primarily. It's about control, about surrender." He moved to stand directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "For years, people have given me what I want because of my money, my power. You'll do the same tonight, but at least we're both honest about the transaction." "What do you want from me?" Olivia whispered. "Everything," Ethan replied simply. "Your fear, your trust, your surrender. I want to see what you're made of, Olivia Reed. I want to know if there's something in you that can't be bought." His words sent a shiver down her spine, not entirely from fear. There was something in his intensity, his focus on her, that was both terrifying and thrilling. "Take off your dress," he commanded, his voice low and even. Olivia's hands went to the zipper at the back of her dress, then hesitated. Her mind raced, calculations and principles warring within her. $1 million, she reminded herself. Slowly, she unzipped the dress and let it fall to the floor, standing before him in her simple black undergarments. She resisted the urge to cover herself, instead lifting her chin in silent defiance. Ethan circled her slowly, his gaze clinical rather than lascivious. Now the rest. Her hands trembled as she unhooked her bra and slipped off her underwear. Standing naked before him, she felt vulnerable yet strangely powerful. Her body was her own, even in this moment of exposure. "You're beautiful," Ethan observed, matter-of-factly rather than flirtatiously. "But beauty is common. I'm more interested in what's beneath the surface." He pointed to a spot on the floor. "Kneel there." Olivia moved to the indicated spot and knelt, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. The plush carpet was soft beneath her knees. Ethan went to a cabinet and returned with something in his hand, a blindfold similar to the one from the car. "I'm going to take away your sight," he explained, moving behind her. "When one sense is diminished, the others heighten. I want you fully present in your body tonight." As he tied the silk over her eyes, Olivia felt her breathing quicken. The darkness was absolute, disorienting. She felt his presence move away, then return. "Hold out your hands, palms up." She complied and felt something cool and metallic being fastened around her wrists. Not handcuffs, but something softer, lined with what felt like leather. "These are restraints," Ethan explained, his voice coming from somewhere above and behind her. "I'm going to bind your hands. If they're too tight, tell me." "They're fine," Olivia managed, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. "Good, now stand." With his assistance, she rose to her feet, her balance uncertain without sight. She felt him guide her across the room, then press her back against what felt like a cool wooden surface. "I'm securing your restraints to the post," he narrated, and she felt her arms being raised above her head. There was a click, and she realized she was now bound, standing naked and blind. Panic fluttered in her chest, but beneath it was something else, a strange, pulsing awareness of her own body, of every sensation, the cool air on her skin, the stretch of her arms above her, the sound of Ethan's breathing, controlled but not entirely even. "What are you feeling right now?" he asked, his voice close again. "Fear," she answered honestly. "Vulnerability." "What else?" She hesitated. "Curiosity." "Good." She felt him move closer, sensed the heat of his body near hers, though they weren't touching. "Tonight is about experiencing the full spectrum of what you're capable of feeling. Olivia, I'm going to push your boundaries, test your limits, not for my pleasure, but for discovery." "Discovery of what?" she whispered. "Of who you truly are when everything is stripped away." What followed was unlike anything Olivia had ever experienced. Ethan used various implements, feathers that tickled unbearably, ice that shocked her heated skin, soft, floggers that stung without truly hurting. He never crossed the line into genuine pain or humiliation, but he kept her constantly off balance, never knowing what sensation would come next. Throughout it all, he spoke to her, sometimes commanding, sometimes questioning, always intensely focused on her responses. He seemed to be mapping her reactions, learning her body's language, discovering what made her gasp or flinch or lean into a touch. The strangest part was that despite her physical vulnerability, despite being completely at his mercy, Olivia didn't feel truly helpless. There was power in her submission, in the knowledge that even bound and blindfolded she retained the ultimate control. She could end this at any time with a single word. But she didn't say it. Not when the sensations overwhelmed her, not when tears leaked from beneath the blindfold, not even when Ethan's touches became more intimate, bringing her body to heights of pleasure she hadn't known were possible. Through it all, she maintained that core of resistance within herself. She might obey his commands, but she wouldn't surrender her essence. She wouldn't become a thing to be used and discarded. Every response, every sound she made was a choice. Her choice. Hours passed. This way, in a strange dance of dominance and resistance. Eventually, Ethan released her bindings and removed her blindfold. Olivia blinked in the dim light, her body humming with sensations, her mind strangely clear. Ethan handed her a silk robe. "Put this on and come with me." He led her to an adjoining bathroom with a sunken tub large enough for several people. It was already filled with steaming, scented water. "Bathe," he instructed. "I'll be back in half an hour." When he returned, Olivia was wrapped in the robe again, her hair damp, her skin flushed from the hot water. She felt physically refreshed but emotionally raw, as if layers of her had been peeled away. Ethan was carrying 2 glasses of amber liquid. He handed one to her. "Whiskey. You look like you need it." She accepted the glass, took a small sip. The liquor burned pleasantly down her throat. "Is that it? Are we done?" "Not quite." Ethan sat in one of 2 armchairs positioned near a fireplace that hadn't been lit. He gestured for her to take the other. "Now we talk." "Talk?" Olivia repeated incredulously. "After all that, you want to chat?" The physical experiences were just tools, Olivia. Means to an end. What matters is what they revealed. He studied her over the rim of his glass, and they revealed quite a lot. "What do you think you learned about me?" she challenged, suddenly angry. The emotional whiplash of the evening was catching up to her. That you're stronger than you appear. That you maintain your dignity even in circumstances designed to strip it away. He took another sip of whiskey. That you resist in subtle ways even while seemingly complying. His accuracy unsettled her. "And what does that tell you?" "That I was right about you." Ethan leaned forward, his gaze intense. "You have something that can't be bought, something genuine in a world of facades." Olivia laughed bitterly. "Says the man who literally bought my obedience for a night." "Did I?" He raised an eyebrow. "You obeyed my commands, yes, but you never surrendered who you are. There was always that spark of defiance, that core of self that remained untouched." He set down his glass. "Do you know how rare that is? Most people I encounter would gladly erase themselves for a fraction of what I'm paying you." The conversation continued deep into the night, moving from the armchairs to the balcony overlooking the Sound, then to the kitchen, where Ethan himself prepared simple omelets at 3 in the morning. They talked about everything: his isolated childhood as the son of a ruthless businessman, her struggles as a first-generation college student, his disillusionment with success, her determination to tell stories that mattered. As dawn broke over the water, casting the world in golden light, Olivia realized something that should have terrified her, but instead filled her with a strange calm. Ethan Blake, for all his wealth and power, was profoundly lonely. And in some inexplicable way, she had reached him tonight, in a way no one had in years. "It's morning," she observed, looking out at the brightening sky. "Our arrangement is technically complete." Ethan stood beside her at the window, closer than necessary. "Yes, it is. So I should go. If you wish." He turned to look at her. "The car is ready whenever you are, and this," he handed her an envelope, "is for you. Account details offshore. $1 million as agreed." Olivia took the envelope, suddenly uncertain. The night had not been what she expected. Ethan had not been what she expected. And most disturbing of all, her own reactions had surprised her. "What happens now?" she asked, voicing the question that had been growing in her mind. "That depends," Ethan replied, his usual mask of control slipping just enough to reveal something vulnerable beneath. "On what you want to happen." In that moment, standing in the golden light of dawn, both of them raw from the night's revelations, Olivia realized they were at a crossroads neither had anticipated. The transaction was complete, but something else, something unplanned and potentially life-changing, had just begun. 2 weeks passed. Olivia had returned to her Bushwick apartment that morning, the offshore account information tucked safely in her bag, her mind reeling from the night's experiences. She had expected to feel used, perhaps even violated. Instead, she felt strangely empowered. The $1 million now sat in her account, untouched. She had verified its existence, logged into the secure banking portal with the credentials Ethan had provided, but she hadn't withdrawn a cent. Part of her still couldn't believe it was real. Another part wasn't sure she wanted it to be. She had quit her job at Delmonico's the day after returning from Long Island. She told herself it was because she no longer needed the money. But the truth was more complicated. She couldn't bear the thought of serving champagne to wealthy men who might see her as something to be purchased the way Ethan had. Except Ethan hadn't really purchased her, had he? He had tried, certainly. Had set up the transaction to seem that way. But somewhere during that long night, the dynamic had shifted. By morning, they had been talking as equals, two souls recognizing something in each other that the rest of the world missed. Olivia sat at her desk now, staring at her laptop screen. For the first time since arriving in New York, she had the freedom to write without worrying about rent or groceries. She could create without constraint, yet the words wouldn't come. Instead, her mind kept returning to Ethan, to the calculation in his eyes when he'd first bound her wrists, to the gradual softening as the night progressed, to the vulnerability he'd revealed in unguarded moments before dawn. She had glimpsed something in him that she suspected few others ever had, the lost boy beneath the billionaire's armor. Her phone buzzed, startling her from her reverie. Unknown number. Her heart jumped to her throat. "Hello?" she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Olivia," Ethan's voice instantly recognizable. "How are you?" She took a breath, buying time to compose herself. "I'm adjusting to being a millionaire." She could hear the slight smile in his voice. "To everything." Olivia moved to her window, looking out at the brick wall of the adjacent building. Her view was a far cry from the panoramic vistas of his Long Island estate. "Why are you calling, Ethan?" "I'd like to see you again." The directness was so typical of him. No preamble, no small talk, just the truth, unvarnished. "Our arrangement is complete," she reminded him, though her pulse quickened. "You have no further obligation to me, nor I to you. This isn't about obligation." A pause. "Have dinner with me tonight." "Why?" "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you for 2 weeks. Another pause, longer this time. "Because our conversation was the first genuine human connection I've had in years." Olivia closed her eyes, fighting the surge of emotion his words evoked. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because whatever happened that night was manufactured, created by an artificial scenario. We're from different worlds, Ethan, worlds that don't mix well." "Then why haven't you spent the money?" The question caught her off guard. "How do you know I haven't?" "I know many things, Olivia, including the fact that you quit your job, but haven't touched that account." A chill ran down her spine. "You're monitoring me?" "The account, yes, you know." His voice softened marginally. "Though I've been tempted." "That's not reassuring." "I'm not trying to reassure you, I'm trying to understand you." He sounded frustrated now, an emotion she hadn't heard from him before. "Why not use the money? Isn't that why you agreed to our arrangement?" Olivia sank onto her bed, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know anymore. I thought it was, but now it feels like blood money," she admitted. "Like I'm not the person I thought I was." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Ethan spoke again. "Have dinner with me, Olivia. No arrangements, no transactions, just two people talking." She should say no. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at her to end this now, before it became something she couldn't control. And yet, where and when? She heard herself asking. "I'll send a car at 7. "No," Olivia said firmly. "I'll meet you somewhere. Public." She could almost hear him smiling. "Daniel, Tribeca, 8 o'clock. Reservation under Blake." After they hung up, Olivia sat motionless for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. What was she doing? Getting involved with Ethan Blake could only end badly. He was too powerful, too damaged, too used to controlling everything and everyone around him. And yet she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him, not just physical attraction, though that was undeniably present, but something deeper, a recognition, perhaps. Two souls who had seen through each other's masks. At 7:30, Olivia stepped out of a taxi in front of Daniel, one of New York's most acclaimed restaurants. She had dressed carefully in a midnight blue dress she'd splurged on months ago but never worn, her hair loose around her shoulders. She felt simultaneously overdressed for her normal life and underdressed for Ethan's world, caught between identities, belonging nowhere. Ethan was already seated when she arrived, rising as she approached the table. His eyes took her in with that same intensity she remembered, missing nothing. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." She took the seat across from him, acutely aware of the other diners, New York's elite in their natural habitat. "This place is impossible to get into on short notice. Not for me." No arrogance in the statement, just fact. "Right." Olivia opened her menu, though she already knew she'd find no prices listed. "The perks of being Ethan Blake." "There are many," he agreed, studying her rather than his menu, though lately they felt increasingly hollow. The first course arrived, something delicate involving caviar that Olivia would have never ordered for herself. As they ate, the conversation remained superficial, cautious, weather, the restaurant's acclaim, New York's cultural scene. It wasn't until their entrees arrived that Ethan set down his fork and fixed her with that penetrating gaze. "You're guarded tonight," he observed. "Can you blame me?" "No." He took a sip of wine. "I understand your wariness, but I'd prefer honesty between us, Olivia. Even brutal honesty." She laughed softly. "You don't want honesty from me, Ethan. Not really. Try me." Olivia set down her own fork, meeting his gaze directly. "Fine. I think you're a man who spent his entire life accumulating power and wealth because it was easier than developing actual human connections. I think you use money to create the illusion of control because genuine relationships terrify you. And I think you've reached a point where you've realized none of it fulfills you. But you have no idea how to live any other way." She expected anger, or at least defensiveness. Instead, Ethan's lips curved slightly. "Perceptive," he acknowledged. "Now it's my turn." "For what?" "Brutal honesty." He leaned forward. "I think you're equally terrified of genuine connection, just for different reasons. You've built an identity around being the principled small-town girl, the struggling writer with integrity. Taking my money threatens that self-image, so you haven't touched it. You're afraid that if you use it, you'll become like the people you despise, the wealthy, the privileged, the morally compromised." The accuracy of his assessment stung. "Is that why you called me? To psychoanalyze me?" "I called you because for the first time in years, I can't stop thinking about someone who isn't me." The raw admission hung between them. "And I suspect you're having the same problem." Olivia felt exposed, as if he could see directly into her mind. "What do you want from me, Ethan? Really?" "I don't know," he admitted, surprising her. "I've never been in this situation before." "What situation is that?" "Meeting someone who sees through the facade." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the restaurant, his bespoke suit, all the trappings of wealth. "Someone who makes me question everything I've built my life around." The vulnerability in his admission sent a shock through Olivia. This was the real Ethan, not the dominant figure from their night together, not the billionaire CEO, but the man beneath it all. Uncertain, questioning, human. "I'm not your salvation," she said softly. "If that's what you're looking for." "I know that." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. "I'm not looking for salvation, Olivia. Just connection. Real connection." The rest of dinner passed in a strange, heightened state of awareness. They talked about everything and nothing: his troubled relationship with his father, her mother's struggle with alcoholism, books they'd loved, places they'd visited. With each exchange, Olivia felt walls crumbling, both his and hers. After dessert, they stood outside the restaurant in the warm evening air. The question of what happened next hung between them, unspoken but palpable. "Would you like to see my apartment?" Ethan asked finally. "The real one, in the city. Not a weekend. Home, not a place designed to impress. Where I actually live." Every logical part of Olivia's brain told her to decline, to end the evening here before it became something she couldn't control. But logic seemed increasingly irrelevant where Ethan Blake was concerned. "Yes," she said simply. His driver appeared with uncanny timing, opening the door to the same black SUV that had taken her to Long Island. This time, however, Olivia could see where they were going, up the West Side Highway, then eastward into the heart of Manhattan, finally, stopping before an unremarkable brownstone in the West Village. "This is yours?" Olivia asked, surprised. She had expected a gleaming penthouse, not this discreet, historic building. "For the past 15 years, Ethan confirmed, leading her up the steps. "I own the entire building, but I only use the top 2 floors. Unlike the Hampton estate or his office, Ethan's actual home felt lived in. The decor was still expensive, of course, but it wasn't designed to impress. Books lined the walls, real books, with cracked spines and dog-eared pages. A half-empty coffee mug sat on an end table. A throw blanket was carelessly draped over one arm of the sofa. "Not what you expected?" Ethan asked, watching her take it all in. "Not at all," Olivia admitted. "It's warm. It's the only place I can truly relax." He moved to a cabinet, pulling out 2 glasses. "Whiskey?" "Just water, thanks." As Ethan poured their drinks, Olivia wandered to his bookshelves, scanning titles. Literature classics mingled with business texts, biographies, and scientific works, the collection of a curious, restless mind. "You've actually read all these?" she asked, accepting the water he handed her. "Most of them." He stood close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. "Reading was my escape as a child. Still is sometimes." "From what?" "Expectations. Loneliness," he shrugged. "Reality." Olivia turned to face him fully. "Why am I here, Ethan? Really?" "Because I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted, his voice low. "About how you made me feel seen for the first time in years, about how you refused to surrender your essence, even when everything was designed to make you do so." He set down his drink and stepped closer, not touching her, but near enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "I want to know you, Olivia Reed. Not as part of a transaction, not as a conquest, just you as you are." The sincerity in his voice shook her. This wasn't the calculating businessman who had propositioned her outside Delmonico's. This was someone new, or perhaps someone very old, a version of Ethan that existed before success hardened him. "I'm afraid of you," she confessed. "I know. Not of what you might do to me," Olivia clarified, "but of what you make me feel, of how easily you see through me." "That works both ways," Ethan reminded her, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. The tension between them was magnetic, drawing them inexorably closer. When his hand finally rose to cup her cheek, the touch felt like an inevitability, as though they had been moving toward this moment since their eyes first met across that restaurant floor. "If I kiss you now," Ethan murmured, "it has nothing to do with money or power or control. It's just because I want to, because I haven't been able to think of anything else for 2 weeks." Olivia felt herself trembling slightly, poised on the edge of a decision that might change everything. "And if I kiss you back? Then we'll figure out the rest as we go." When their lips met, it wasn't with the calculated passion of their night together. This was something entirely different, tentative, almost sweet, both of them vulnerable in ways neither had anticipated. Olivia felt something crack open inside her, a wall she'd built long before meeting Ethan, perhaps even before coming to New York. The kiss deepened, hands beginning to explore, bodies moving closer. But before it could progress further, Olivia gently pulled away. "I can't," she whispered, her forehead resting against his. "Not tonight." Instead of frustration or anger, understanding filled Ethan's eyes. Too fast? Too complicated. She stepped back slightly, creating space to think clearly. "I need to figure out what this is, Ethan, what we are to each other, beyond transaction, beyond fantasy." He nodded, slowly. "I understand." His hands dropped to his sides. "For what it's worth, I don't know either. This is uncharted territory for me." The admission, so contrary to his carefully controlled image, made Olivia smile. Ethan Blake, admitting he doesn't have all the answers. The business world would be shocked. "The business world doesn't know me," he replied simply. "You're beginning to." They spent the rest of the evening talking, sitting side by side on his comfortable sofa, occasionally touching but never returning to the intensity of that kiss. Olivia learned about his troubled childhood, about the father whose approval he never earned, about his first business successes and the gradual hollowing out of his personal life as his empire grew. In turn, she told him about her own struggles. The alcoholic mother she still loved fiercely, the scholarship that had been her ticket out of her small town, the passion for writing that had sustained her through disappointments and rejections. It was past midnight when Olivia finally rose to leave. "I should go." "You could stay," Ethan offered, then quickly added, "The guest room is made up, no expectations." The offer was tempting, not just for the comfort his home offered, but for the chance to wake up and continue this unexpected connection tomorrow. But Olivia knew she needed space to process everything that had happened. "Thank you, but I need to go home. I need to think." Ethan nodded, disappointment visible but acceptance there too. "I'll have the car take you." At her door, he kissed her again, briefly, sweetly. "When can I see you again?" The question held none of his usual commanding tone. For perhaps the first time, Ethan Blake was asking, not telling. "Call me tomorrow," Olivia replied, surprising herself with how much she wanted him to. "We'll figure it out." In the car heading back to Brooklyn, Olivia closed her eyes, trying to make sense of the evening, of the past 2 weeks, really. She had entered Ethan's world thinking it would be a simple transaction, one night of obedience for financial freedom. Instead, she'd found herself entangled in something far more complex. The strangest part wasn't that she was drawn to him. That was understandable. He was handsome, brilliant, fascinating in his contradictions. What truly unsettled her was how clearly he saw her, how he had identified truths about herself that she had barely acknowledged. As the car pulled up to her building, Olivia made a decision. Tomorrow she would transfer some of that $1 million, not all, but enough to give herself breathing room, enough to write without the constant pressure of survival, not because she was comfortable with how she'd earned it, but because refusing to use it was a form of denial. A way of pretending that night hadn't changed her, but it had. That night and the man behind it had begun to transform her in ways she was only beginning to understand. The question now was whether that transformation would destroy her, or finally allow her to become the person she was meant to be. 3 months passed. Spring blossomed into summer, the city transforming from the cool greens of May to the vibrant heat of August. Olivia's life had transformed just as dramatically. She had moved from her Bushwick studio to a modest but beautiful one-bedroom in Park Slope, with large windows that flooded the space with light and a small alcove perfect for a writing desk. She had used Ethan's money. Yes, she had finally come to think of it that way, but frugally, investing most of it according to the advice of a financial planner she'd hired. Most importantly, she was writing. Really writing, for the first time since coming to New York. The novel she'd started and abandoned countless times was now 2/3 complete. Each morning, she woke at dawn and wrote for hours, the words flowing as they never had before. And then there was Ethan. Their relationship defied simple categorization. They saw each other several times a week, sometimes for elaborate dinners, sometimes for simple walks through the city. They talked for hours, argued passionately, laughed more than either had expected. They had become lovers, the physical side of their relationship evolving naturally from the intense connection that had formed between them. Yet Olivia maintained her own space, her own life. She insisted on it, despite Ethan's subtle suggestions that she might be more comfortable at his place. Her independence was non-negotiable, something he was still learning to accept. Today, they were meeting for lunch at a small cafe in the West Village, one of their favorite spots, unpretentious enough that Ethan wasn't constantly recognized, yet good enough to satisfy his refined palate. Olivia arrived first, securing a table by the window. She was deep in revisions of her morning's work when Ethan appeared, looking slightly out of place in his bespoke suit among the cafe's casual crowd. "Sorry I'm late," he said, bending to kiss her before taking the seat across from her. "Board meeting ran long." "Everything okay?" she asked, noting the tension around his eyes. "Just the usual corporate politics." He loosened his tie slightly. "Nothing worth for discussing." His gaze fell to her notebook. How's the writing? Good. Really good, actually. Olivia closed her notebook, sliding it into her bag. I think I might finish the first draft by the end of the month. That's wonderful. The genuine pride in his voice warmed her. Will you let me read it when it's done? Maybe. She smiled to soften the answer. First drafts are private. You know that. Ethan raised his hands in surrender. Worth a try. Their conversation paused as the waiter took their orders. Olivia noticed Ethan checking his phone surreptitiously, something he rarely did in her presence unless it was truly urgent. You sure everything's okay? She pressed once they were alone again. He hesitated, clearly weighing how much to share. Despite their closeness, there remained areas of his life he kept separate from her, mostly his business dealings, which she was largely content to remain ignorant about. There's a situation brewing with one of my companies, he admitted finally. A hostile takeover attempt of a tech firm I acquired last year. It's getting complicated. Complicated how? The usual corporate warfare tactics, stock manipulation, leaked information, attempts to turn board members. He shrugged, attempting nonchalance. Nothing I haven't dealt with before. But something in his tone told Olivia there was more to it. Who's behind it? A venture capital group led by Richard Carrington. Ethan's face hardened at the name. We have history. What kind of history? The unpleasant kind. He smiled tightly. Let's talk about something else. Tell me more about your novel. Olivia recognized the deflection but decided not to push. She'd learned that with Ethan, direct confrontation rarely yielded results. Patience and observation were more effective. Their lunch continued pleasantly enough, though Ethan remained distracted. As they finished their coffee, he reached across the table to take her hand. I need to go to San Francisco for a few days, he said, to deal with this situation personally. When do you leave? Tonight. I'll be back Thursday at the latest. He squeezed her hand gently. Come with me. The invitation surprised her. In the months they'd been together, Ethan had traveled frequently, for business, but he'd never asked her to accompany him. I can't, she replied automatically. I'm in the middle of a crucial section of the book. The momentum is important. Disappointment flickered across his face, quickly masked. Of course. I understand. Do you? Olivia tilted her head, studying him. Sometimes I wonder if you really do, Ethan, if you understand what this book means to me. I'm trying to. He released her hand, sitting back. But yes, occasionally I struggle to comprehend why you won't let me help you more. Why you insist on living in that small apartment when you could be more comfortable. Why I won't become dependent on you, Olivia finished for him. Is that what you want, Ethan? For me to be dependent on you? That's not fair, isn't it? She kept her voice low, mindful of the other diners. Sometimes I think you're most comfortable when people need something from you, when you have something to offer that they can't get elsewhere. It gives you control. His jaw tightened. I thought we were past that, past reducing each other to simplistic psychological profiles. We've come a long way, Olivia acknowledged, but old patterns don't disappear overnight. I still catch myself thinking like a poor girl from Pennsylvania sometimes. And you still think like a controlling billionaire, he supplied, a hint of self-mockery in his tone. Something like that. She smiled slightly, diffusing the tension. Go to San Francisco, deal with your corporate crisis. I'll be here when you get back. Ethan studied her face for a long moment. I love you, you know. The words hung between them, not the first time he'd said them, but still new enough to carry weight. Olivia reached across the table, taking his hand again. I know, I love you too. She squeezed his fingers. That doesn't mean I'll always do what you want. One of the many reasons I love you, he replied, the tension leaving his shoulders. Call me tonight, after your writing session. I will. They basically parted outside the cafe, his driver already waiting at the curb. Ethan kissed her goodbye, lingering a moment longer than usual, as if reluctant to break contact. I'll miss you, he murmured against her lips. It's only 3 days, Olivia reminded him, though she felt the same reluctance. Go win your corporate war. As his car pulled away, Olivia walked toward the subway, her mind already returning to her novel. The protagonist was at a crucial point of decision, much like Olivia herself had been that morning in Long Island, standing in Ethan's house with $1 million and an uncertain future ahead of her. Back in her apartment, Olivia spent the afternoon writing, losing herself in the fictional world she'd created. It wasn't until evening fell that she emerged from the creative trance, stretching muscles stiff from hours of stillness. Her phone showed 3 missed calls, all from an unknown number. No voicemails. As she was considering whether to call back, it rang again, the same unknown number. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Is this Olivia Reed?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Jessica Torres. I'm a reporter with the New York Times." The woman's voice was professional but intense. "I'd like to talk to you about your relationship with Ethan Blake." Olivia's stomach dropped. "I have no comment on that." "Ms. Reed, I understand your reluctance, but I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." The reporter paused. "We're running a story tomorrow about Mr. Blake's business practices, specifically about how he leverages personal relationships for business advantage." "What are you talking about?" "We have evidence that suggests Mr. Blake's recent relationship with you was orchestrated to gain access to intellectual property belonging to your former roommate, Claire Winters." Olivia nearly dropped the phone. Claire had been her roommate when she first moved to New York, a brilliant software developer who'd been working on an AI algorithm that she believed would revolutionize natural language processing. They'd lost touch when Olivia moved out. "That's absurd," Olivia managed, her voice steady despite the shock. "I haven't even spoken to Claire in months." "Perhaps not consciously," Jessica conceded. "But our sources indicate that Mr. Blake initiated contact with you specifically because of your connection to Miss Winters. Her algorithm is now mysteriously similar to one being developed by one of Mr. Blake's tech companies. Your sources are wrong." Olivia's mind raced, remembering her first meeting with Ethan. It had seemed like chance, a random encounter at Delmonico's. But had it been? "Ethan and I met by accident." "Did you?" The reporter's voice held skepticism. "Ms. Reed, I'm giving you an opportunity to comment before this story runs. Mr. Blake has a history of using personal relationships to acquire business assets. You wouldn't be the first." "I have nothing more to say to you," Olivia replied, her voice suddenly cold. "Don't call again." She ended the call, her hands shaking slightly. It couldn't be true. Their meeting had been coincidental. The connection they'd formed had been real, unexpected. Hadn't it? Doubt crept in like poison. Ethan was a strategist, always thinking several moves ahead. He'd admitted as much. Was it really so far-fetched that he might have orchestrated their first meeting? That the spilled champagne, his intervention, his subsequent proposition, all of it might have been calculated? And if that were true, what about everything that followed? The night at his Long Island home, the gradual building of trust between them, the relationship that had transformed both their lives. Had it all been a facade? No. Olivia refused to believe it. She had seen Ethan at his most vulnerable, had witnessed his struggles, his growth, his genuine efforts to connect with her as an equal. That couldn't be faked. Could it? She picked up her phone again, intending to call Ethan, to confront him directly. But her finger hovered over his name. If the reporter was right, would he even tell her the truth? And if she asked and he lied, how would she know? Instead, she called Claire. "Olivia." Claire sounded surprised. "It's been forever. How are you?" "I'm good," Olivia replied, trying to keep her voice casual. "I've been meaning to call. I was wondering how your project was going, the AI thing you were working on when we lived together." Claire's voice immediately cooled. "Why are you asking about that?" "Just curious. Last I heard you were making real progress. Last I heard you were dating Ethan Blake." Claire's voice now held unmistakable anger. "Funny coincidence that." Olivia's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb, Olivia. It doesn't suit you. Claire sighed heavily. His company filed patents 6 months ago for algorithms, suspiciously similar to mine. Right around the time you two got together, the timing seemed significant. Claire, I swear I never told him anything about your work. I would never... Maybe not directly, Claire interrupted. But he's not stupid, and neither am I. He dated you to get information, Olivia. Maybe you didn't realize you were giving it to him, but somehow you did. The call ended shortly after, Claire refusing to believe Olivia's protestations of innocence. As the evening progressed, Olivia's initial shock curdled into anger. She tried calling Ethan repeatedly, but his phone went straight to voicemail, probably already on his flight to San Francisco. Sleep eluded her that night. She tossed and turned, replaying every interaction with Ethan from the beginning, searching for clues, for slip-ups, for anything that might confirm or refute her suspicions. By morning, exhaustion had given way to a cold clarity. Whether Ethan had manipulated her from the start or not, the truth was that they had built something real together, or at least she had thought they had. She needed to hear his explanation before making any judgments. The New York Times article appeared online at 6 a.m. Olivia read it with growing horror. It detailed not just the situation with Claire's algorithm, but multiple instances where Ethan had allegedly used personal relationships to gain business advantages. Former lovers, friends, colleagues, all described how he had charmed them, earned their trust, and then leveraged that trust for his corporate benefit. Her name appeared only briefly as his current girlfriend, a struggling writer, but the implication was clear. Olivia turned off her phone, unable to bear the thought of calls from friends or family who might have seen the article. Instead, she sat at her writing desk, staring out at the morning light filtering through the trees of Park Slope. Everything looked the same, yet everything had changed. She didn't hear from Ethan until late that night. When her phone finally rang with his number, she almost didn't answer. "Were you ever going to tell me?" she asked without preamble when she finally picked up. "Olivia." His voice sounded tired, strained. "Where are you?" "At home." "Answer the question, Ethan. Were you ever going to tell me that you targeted me because of Claire, that our entire relationship was built on a lie?" "It's not that simple." The weariness in his voice deepened. "Yes, I knew who you were when we met at Delmonico's. Yes, I was aware of your connection to Claire Winters, but that's not why." "Stop." Olivia's voice cracked. "Just stop. You knew. You orchestrated our meeting, the spilled champagne, the white knight intervention. It was all calculated." "The meeting, yes," Ethan admitted. "What followed? No. That wasn't planned, Olivia. What happened between us that night, everything since, none of that was strategic." "How can I possibly believe that?" She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. "How can I trust anything you say?" "I'm coming back tonight," he said. "We need to talk in person. This isn't something I can explain over the phone." "Don't bother." Olivia wiped at her tears angrily. "I don't want to see you right now. I don't even know who you are anymore." "Yes, you do." His voice softened. "You know me better than anyone ever has, Olivia. That's real. Whatever you may think of how we met, what we've built together, is genuine. I need time, Ethan." "I understand." He paused. "But I'm not giving up on us. Not without a fight." After they hung up, Olivia sat in the darkness of her apartment, feeling more alone than she had in months. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal. It was the seed of doubt he'd planted. What if he was telling the truth? What if their initial meeting had been calculated, but everything after had been real? Days passed in a blur. Olivia stopped writing, unable to focus on her novel when her own life felt like a badly plotted fiction. She ignored Ethan's calls, his texts, the flowers and letters that arrived at her door. She needed space to think, to feel, to decide. It was Claire who finally broke through her isolation, appearing at her door unannounced a week after the Times article. "You didn't know, did you?" Claire asked, studying Olivia's face. "About him. Targeting you because of me." "No." Olivia's voice was hoarse from disuse. "I didn't." Claire nodded slowly. I believe you. I'm sorry I didn't before. They talked for hours, piecing together what had happened. Claire had been approached by one of Ethan's companies 6 months earlier with an offer to buy her algorithm. When she'd refused, strange things had begun happening. Potential investors backing out inexplicably, her data being compromised, and finally, the appearance of a suspiciously similar technology patented by Blake Enterprises. The question is, Claire said finally, what are you going to do now? Olivia had been asking herself the same question for days. I don't know. Part of me wants to walk away, start over somewhere else. Another part still loves him, Claire finished for her. Is that crazy? After what he did? Claire shrugged. Love usually is a little crazy, but Olivia, if you go back to him, do it with your eyes open. People like Ethan Blake don't change overnight. He's built his empire on manipulation and control. That doesn't just disappear because he fell in love. After Claire left, Olivia made a decision. She called Ethan. I'll see you, she said when he answered immediately. Tonight, my place. He arrived exactly on time, looking somehow both immaculate in his expensive suit and utterly exhausted. The shadows under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping any better than she had. Thank you for seeing me, he said, remaining standing when she didn't invite him to sit. I'm listening, Olivia replied, arms crossed protectively over her chest. Explain. Ethan took a deep breath. The truth is complicated. Yes, I knew who you were when we met. My company had been tracking Claire's work, and I knew you had been her roommate. I engineered our meeting at Delmonico's. Olivia flinched but remained silent. But I never used you to get information about her work, he continued. We acquired the technology through legitimate means from a developer who had been working on similar algorithms and was willing to sell. The timeline matched up with our relationship by coincidence, not causation. And I'm supposed to believe that? I can show you the documentation. The acquisition history, everything. Ethan took a step closer but stopped when she tensed. But that's not the most important part of this. What is then? Olivia asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. The fact that I orchestrated our meeting doesn't change what happened afterward. His eyes sought hers, pleading for understanding. Yes, I approached you with ulterior motives, but from the moment we began talking, from that first real conversation we had, everything changed. How convenient, Olivia said bitterly. It's the truth. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. Olivia, think about it. If all I wanted was information about Claire's work, why continue our relationship after that night? Why open myself up to you in ways I never have with anyone? Why risk everything I've built by falling in love with you? His words hung in the air between them. Olivia wanted desperately to believe him, but doubt had taken root, poisoning everything they'd shared. Trust has to be earned, Ethan, and you started our entire relationship with a lie. I know. For the first time since she'd known him, Ethan looked truly defeated. And I'll spend the rest of my life earning back your trust if you'll let me. I don't know if I can. Her voice broke slightly. Every time I think about how we met, I'll wonder what else was calculated, what else was strategic. Ethan crossed the distance between them slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. When she didn't back away, he gently took her hands in his. Then, don't think about how we met, he said softly. Think about everything that came after, the conversations that lasted until dawn, the way you challenged me when no one else would, the first time you told me you loved me. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. Think about how we've both changed, Olivia, how we've grown together. She looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of manipulation or deceit. What she saw instead was vulnerability, raw, unfiltered emotion that the Ethan Blake she'd first met would never have allowed himself to show. I need time, she said finally, withdrawing her hands from his, and space, to figure out what I want, what I believe. Ethan nodded, accepting her terms, even as pain flashed across his features. I understand. Take all the time you need. He moved toward the door, then paused. But Olivia, I meant what I said. I'm not giving up on us." After he left, Olivia sat alone in her apartment, feeling the weight of decision pressing down on her. Could she trust him again? Should she? Or was she just another in a long line of people Ethan Blake had charmed and manipulated for his own ends? Days turned into weeks. Olivia threw herself back into her writing, finding solace in the fictional world she controlled completely. The novel progressed rapidly, fueled by her emotional turmoil, her protagonist's journey echoing her own struggles with trust and deception. Ethan respected her request for space. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. The only communication was a single email containing documents that supported his claim about acquiring the technology through legitimate means. Olivia forwarded them to Claire, who reluctantly confirmed they appeared genuine. A month after their confrontation, Olivia finished her novel. The ending surprised even her protagonist choosing forgiveness not out of weakness, but out of strength, choosing to believe in the possibility of redemption, of genuine change. As she typed the final words, Olivia realized she had written her way to her own answer. She called Ethan that evening. "Can we meet?" she asked when he answered on the first ring. "Tomorrow." "Name the time and place," he replied, hope evident in his voice despite his attempt to contain it. They met at Central Park, on a bench overlooking the lake. Ethan was already there when she arrived, rising as she approached. He looked different, somehow less polished, more human. The designer suit had been replaced by simple slacks and a sweater. His hair was longer than she'd ever seen it, slightly tousled by the autumn breeze. "You look well," he said as she sat beside him, leaving careful space between them. "I finished my book," Olivia replied, watching ducks glide across the water. "Last night." "Congratulations." The pride in his voice was genuine. "That's wonderful." "It's different from what I thought it would be," she continued. "Darker in some ways, more hopeful in others." She turned to look at him directly. "It helped me understand some things about us, about forgiveness, about trust, about the choice to believe in someone's capacity for change." Olivia took a deep breath. "I'm still angry about how we met, Ethan. I probably always will be on some level, but I've realized something important." "What's that?" "That beginnings don't define relationships. What comes after does." She moved her hand across the bench, letting it rest closer to his. "The man I fell in love with, the real Ethan beneath all the wealth and power and control, I believe he exists. I've seen him, and I believe he's worth fighting for." Ethan's hand moved to cover hers tentatively, as if expecting her to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers intertwined with hers. "Where do we go from here?" he asked, vulnerability evident in every line of his face. "Forward," Olivia replied simply. "Together, but differently than before." "How so?" "With complete honesty. No more strategic omissions, no more calculated moves." She tightened her grip on his hand. "And with balance, equal partners, Ethan. Not benefactor and recipient, not controller and controlled. Partners." A slow smile spread across his face, not the confident smile of the billionaire CEO, but something softer, more genuine. "I think I can manage that. It won't be easy," Olivia warned. "For either of us, we both have patterns, defenses, ways we've learned to protect ourselves. Nothing worth having comes easily," Ethan replied, drawing her hand to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "And you, Olivia Reed, are worth everything." They stayed in the park until sunset, talking about the future, about the changes they both needed to make, about the relationship they wanted to build together. When darkness fell, they walked hand in hand through the city they both loved. No driver waiting, no destination in mind, just two people finding their way together. 6 months later, Olivia's novel was accepted by a prestigious publishing house. The advance was modest, nothing compared to Ethan's wealth, but it was hers, earned through her own talent and persistence. The night she signed the contract, they celebrated at his brownstone in the West Village, which had gradually become their shared home. "To new beginnings," Ethan toasted, raising his glass. "And to transformations," Olivia added, clinking her glass against his, "the ones we never see coming." Ethan set down his glass and took her hands. "I have something for you. Not for the book deal, though I'm incredibly proud of you for that. For us. For who we've become together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Olivia's breath caught as he opened it, revealing not a ring but a key. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "The deed to your apartment is inside," Ethan explained. "I had my name removed. It's yours now, completely. No strings attached." When Olivia had finally agreed to move in with him, she had insisted on keeping her Park Slope apartment, a symbol of her independence, a space that was truly hers. Ethan had offered to buy it outright, but she had refused, compromising by allowing him to co-sign the lease when her landlord had been reluctant to rent to a writer with uncertain income. "Why?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. "Because I finally understand what you've been trying to tell me all along." He smiled, a hint of self-deprecation in his expression. "Love isn't about possession or control. It's about freedom, about choosing each other every day, not because we have to, but because we want to." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes as she took the box from his hands. "You really have changed, haven't you?" "We both have," Ethan replied, drawing her into his arms. "That night when you first came to my home, when I thought I could buy obedience, buy connection, I was so lost, Olivia, so empty. I had everything and nothing at the same time. And now," she whispered against his chest, "now I have the only thing that matters." He pulled back slightly to look into her eyes, a love based on truth, on seeing each other completely, flaws, mistakes, baggage and all, and choosing each other anyway. As they stood together in the warm light of the home they now shared, Olivia marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From that first night of power and submission to this moment of genuine partnership, they had transformed each other in ways neither could have anticipated. The millionaire and the struggling writer. Two souls who had found in each other not what they wanted, but what they needed. The courage to be vulnerable, the strength to change, and the wisdom to recognize that true power lay not in control, but in surrender to love. Fim da Historia. If you enjoyed this emotional journey of transformation and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories that explore the complexities of human connection. Hit the like button if Ethan and Olivia's story touched your heart, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Olivia's position? Every week we bring you unique narratives that challenge perceptions and celebrate the power of authentic love. Join our community of storytellers and dreamers. Your next favorite tale is just a click away.